Amy, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love it. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Me too.
Um, Amy Laughlin, you have been an actress. You have gone into healing modalities and everything in the between. And I met you probably a couple years ago at this point. We've had incredible conversations, and I really cherish those. And your view and your take on everything and perspectives. I'm looking forward to that. So this conversation. So let's dive in. I want to ask a little bit. Let's start with the what we'll call the real world stuff. So you had this incredible, I'll say incredible, maybe that's my judgment. I put you on a pedestal because you had this incredible acting career and CSI Miami. I know that you had other different walk-ins on different episodes and things like that. I don't know the industry, so I don't know what the right terminology is. So you had this really this long life, and then you worked your way, you found yourself, and I want to ask you about that, where that kind of transition was. And then now you're really more into healing, working with people, different, again, the modalities, the breath work, and these beautiful outlooks and perspectives on life. So you've really come an incredible journey of what I guess what somebody would consider two uniquely different paths and different life paths. So
Yes,
that's just my observational, but let's get into it. But if we may, can we start in like the acting world?
absolutely.
Okay, cool. So like
Yeah.
how long do me just dive into it a little bit? Like how long were you a formal actress, or did it come as childhood? And then where did that kind of world take you, and where did you live and
I,
all that?
I
So I
did
want to hear
my
it all.
first official job my senior year in high school. And I
Okay.
went to a private school in Chicago and was a dancer at the time as well. So already in the performing arts. And I got hired to do I got hired by a modeling agency, and then through that I got an audition for an after school special and booked it. And I have to say, it was absolutely horrible. It was it's hilarious to watch. But I loved doing it. I loved performing. And I was very much a perfectionist in high school. It was a very grueling, competitive academic high school. And I had struggled with anorexia at the time. I had been anorexic for 3 years. And so I was very much a perfectionist, just wanted to get straight A's and really wanted to go to an Ivy League school. And it was just a tough year. I was actually really bad at taking tests, especially in English, because I could analyze every answer into being right. And I would just find myself already then at 17 in these rabbit holes of, if you look at the answer this way. So I have a 4.2 GPA, but did really poorly on tests. And I only got into my safety school. And I felt really ashamed. And looking back now, I'm like, oh man, it's really helped me in my approach with education with my children because it's just ridiculous. I went to University of Michigan, which is a great college and a difficult school to get into. But I had such high expectations on myself and had just dedicated all of my life into being loved and accepted and seen as like a good, hardworking student. And that
Yeah.
rejection.
If I may say one thing too, that's really interesting because that is that's many people's height of what you achieved. And you were still down on yourself. You were
Oh,
still beating yourself up.
Oh, my mom just had to pick me up off the floor. I just felt such a failure.
Yeah.
And I went to Michigan for a year and just was really unhappy. And I just couldn't find my place to fit in. I wasn't a sorority girl. Like I had no problem making friends, but I wanted to transfer into I started taking theater there, getting into the dance, trying to get into the arts, but it just wasn't clicking. And I regressed back into anorexia and came back to Chicago for the summer and again went back to my modeling agency and actually I said to my parents, I can't go back to school. I don't like it there. I'm getting depressed. It's not healthy for me. And I got a contract to go to Taipei to model for 3 months.
Wow.
And I was like,
And is it
this is
all like
amazing.
still photography type of work, or is it
All
like,
still photography.
Okay.
And over the summer at my agency, I was taking acting classes and I was taking on-camera acting classes and in the commercial department. That summer, I did get into SAG, the Screen Actors Guild,
Yeah.
for the first time, got a couple local commercials. But my father said to me, "There's no way that you're going to Taipei. You're way too skinny. I'm not gonna let you out of my sight that far for that long." And I was like, "Fine. If I don't go to Taipei, then I'm gonna move to New York and become an actor." And he was like, "Sure." And so I did. And that summer
Yeah.
in August, my agency set me up with a few meetings, and I met who would become my future manager, who manages a lot of celebrities still right now. Um, and I remember the day I selected him, it was on my birthday, and I remember it because Jerry Garcia died on my birthday. And in New York
Oh,
City, in front of me was a delivery guy who was calling in sick to work. He was like, "I can't come in today, man. Jerry Garcia died," and hung up. And it was my turn, and I called my parents, and I'm like, "I found my agent. I'm moving out here." And I never looked back, and I was in New York for 7 years after that,
wow.
and
Did you did you do stage
I
and
did
film,
stage.
or
I did Off-Broadway. I was with an incredible teacher. His name was Fred Karaman, who was best friends with Dustin Hoffman, but did a lot of Broadway. He like lived above Miles Davis, so had great stories about
yeah, I bet.
that the 60s and the 70s in the acting world, and was just one of the most phenomenal teachers that I have ever been with in my life at
Mm.
48 now, and was in class with people that were actively on Broadway, and then was working in the restaurant industry and auditioning, and then also taking classes at NYU Gallatin,
Oh, cool.
where you could make your own major, and was ironically studying African history and African American history with a
Oh,
focus
very
on the
cool.
Harlem Renaissance. So it's totally
Yeah.
random.
Yeah, wow.
And yeah, you can't make this stuff up. It was such a specific major, and
Yeah,
actually
interesting that you'd be not that means anything. I'm just saying what we're drawn to is always an interesting trail.
what we're drawn to is our soul speaking to us
Sure.
when we really listen to it. And it's not, and it shouldn't, I think it's no fun if it makes sense.
I
The
like that.
nonsensical is so much more fun. And
That's
my,
where I was gonna say that's where the play is. That's where the adventure is. That's where
exactly, that's where
yeah.
the growth is.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
you get
Yeah.
your edge pushed. And, then you learn how to handle criticism too, because you get a lot of side eyes. So that
I couldn't imagine.
strengthens
That is not to derail it, but I'll tell you the criticism, I couldn't even imagine the level of criticism it takes with the auditions and the amount that you just that exposure. Because it's probably not, I don't want to derail because I don't want to get off course, but I was just going to say is because I can only imagine that it's a physical attribute. Maybe it's how you sound, your voice. There's every aspect of you could be criticized.
all
It's hard enough just to take criticism on I don't even know, on an email.
right.
I
Well,
couldn't even
and
imagine that.
I think they treat you sometimes, some people, this is not everybody. There's a lot of people
Yeah.
that I worked with that were incredibly kind. But I remember that summer when I was modeling in Chicago, I had a photographer say to me, "It's people like you that make me want to quit photography." When I was later in LA and Hollywood, I would just be told, like, you just don't have any sparkle. You don't have what it takes. And you'd get
Wow.
criticized on your looks and your weight and your clothes and all of that. So it really is, I don't think it's something that anybody should ever get used to, and it
Sure.
can be a great tool once you get through it, but it really did for someone who was already steeped in insecurity and the physical manifestation of a disease that stems
I didn't want to bring that
insecurity.
up, but with you had mentioned the anorexia, the levels of that must have run really deep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a people-pleasing disease. It's a
Okay.
self-loathing and control and people-pleasing, codependent disease, I guess a lot
Sure.
of people would call it as well. But what was fascinating, to go back to my major and at Gallatin at NYU, is actually what booked me. My biggest commercial that I got in New York that brought me out to West Africa, that at 22 was the start of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I just happened to ignore it for 19 years before I
Yeah, okay.
decided to listen.
Yeah.
But
So that was in New York then, you booked that?
it was in New York, it was a commercial for Merrill Lynch, and I went in to the first audition, and at first it was gonna be filmed in Russia, and they asked me if I knew anything about Russia, and randomly, my mom, when I was little, taught me her I think it was her my grandmother was married 6 times, so her 4th husband had a grandmother that was Russian and taught her 1 phrase in it. And so I said, "Yes, I know 1 phrase in Russian. It's "Здравствуйте, пьяное яблоко." And they were like, "Whoa, what does that mean?" And I was like, "Greetings, you drunk apple." And that's literally what it means. And they were like, "You're getting a call back." And when I got called back, it was down to about 10 people. They were just hiring 1 actor. And they were like, "Hey, we're not doing it in Russia anymore, but we're going to Africa. Do you have any connections there?" He had that connection to Russia. And I was like, "Actually, I'm studying West Africa at Gallatin right now. I'm studying the Yoruba tribe and the music there." It was one of the major classes that I was taking, and knew
Yeah.
the history, and it's what booked me the job, and it was an incredible job. It took me out to Mali, to Djenné, where the largest mud mosque in the world is,
Oh,
and to the
really?
Dogon Valley, one of the most spiritual places in the world. And I was with the cinematographer was this man named Valmish Sigmund, who was an Academy Award winner for another movie that was filmed in Africa, Ghosts in the Darkness, I believe, with Val
Oh, wow.
Kilmer.
Yeah.
And so it was just me and a bunch of these producers in this small, in the bush community in the 5th poorest country in the world, and it was my first truly, ginormous spiritual awakening, and it was
Mm.
completely what one would look from the outside and call it random, but I
Yeah,
would say very synchronistic and divine
absolutely. Yeah,
and
I'm sure you were
perhaps
called that.
predestined.
Yeah. So was the connection to was it I'm sure it was across everything internally, but was it also to the land, to the people? Did you just have such a deep resonance with it, or
Oh,
was there
absolutely. The second I stepped foot on that land, my whole body was just shaking, and I felt at home, and I just felt this deep love, and I was not raised as a spiritual person. I was raised as spiritual. My grandmother was a medium and an actress as well, but not raised in church or having regular religious practices. And the second that I stepped there, I felt God. I just felt this frequency, this
yeah,
resonance, this overwhelming. What I say a lot is it was the first time that I cried from beauty. I just sobbed from beauty. It was the most beautiful people.
yeah. How long were you there?
I was just there a week.
Okay. Yeah. But then that was it, I'm sure. So
That
you
was
ended
it,
up
and
back
I
there,
was
right?
offered because of SAG, I could go back and party with all the cool producers in Paris for and stay a few extra days there because as an actor, you get, like, recovery business, a little bit because it's so hard. And they were like, "Or you can stay here." And so I stayed with 2 British sound guys. It was just like the 3 of us that hung back and went to the Dogon Valley and
Okay.
explored, and I was just like I was never the same after that.
Yeah. Where
And
is the Dogon Valley?
the
After I'm
Dogon
gonna
Valley
look that
is
up.
in Mali,
It is okay.
and they are the people who discovered, they say, um, Sirius B.
Yeah.
And long before, French astronomers came out there, and they were like, "How do you guys know all this stuff?
Yeah.
We haven't had the technology to be able to even see this stuff from where they are." And they're like, "You can't
So
see it."
I do remember hearing that. I think it might have been like History Channel's like Ancient Aliens or something, like the
Yes,
Dogon tribe
yes.
they could see, and there's no visual way that the human eye could see
No.
these astrological formations.
Yes.
I'm saying it completely wrong, but
Astronomers.
there's no way. Yes, there was no way that they could actually cite that.
Mhm.
So they were like, and then they have I think there's legends or they have these folklore of how somebody went up or they're either the divinity of being visited by this knowledge.
Yeah, and it was the beings called the Nuomo, which are half,
Okay.
a human, half fish beings, like, the fish
Oh,
is the
okay.
big
Okay.
and apparently they're, like, blonde, tall, straight long hair, Pleiadian-ish vibe,
Sure.
and that was Jenne had really struck me. It's so beautiful. It's a very Islamic place. They have the call to prayer every day. But moving there, I was like, what is this? This
Yeah.
is, and it's their homes are hidden in the caves. And so you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and then all of a sudden you turn out there and it just overrolls into this green area with this river running and these vibrant colors of these women with babies strapped to their back and balancing things on their head, and they're all everything's built in to the cliffs because they were running from
Okay.
civil war and hid
Got
there,
it.
and it was there that they connected to these beings, and then they have diviners there that work in the ground and work with a snake that lives in a cave that they speak to and work with the energy of the fox. They have a fox that comes and divines every night in the sand with stones and sticks and speaks to them about how to make offerings to their ancestors, to connect to these beings, and to be able to be supported and protected by
Oh my
these
God.
frequencies.
That's incredible. What year was that about that you went to there?
That
The
was
first time?
19 I but the beginning of 1999,
Okay.
right? Y2K.
Yeah, before Y2K.
Yeah,
So
but really a significant part of my journey too, because it was right when I got back that I got hit with a very severe illness, mental illness,
okay. Okay.
um, which I have come to the conclusion is the cause of multiple things. But that was a very big year for me, and then it
Yeah.
took me 19 years to recover from that illness. And
Really?
it wasn't until I started studying with my teacher, um, Elder Malidoma Somé, that I was able to heal and get my heart and brain back in alignment and online.
Okay. Wow. I don't wanna you know what? It's funny because not funny because I do wanna hear that stretch too.
Yeah.
I guess just to close here, how about really quick, let's close out some of the
Yeah.
I don't wanna be, like, too segmented, but with the acting, you after that, you came back and then you were in CSI Miami, so you went really
Right.
back into the acting industry hard at that point then, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or did it just
So
kinda come did it come naturally like that, or
yes,
oh, that
I know, right? So what happened is I started having my a big dark night of the soul
yeah,
and struggling with depression and anxiety and severe OCD and agoraphobia in New York, but was still acting at the time, auditioning, working in restaurants. I did, oh God, what's his name? I did a TV show with Oliver Platt and Lily Taylor during that time and did a bunch more commercials and worked regularly, but I couldn't feel anymore. So
yeah,
I went to my parents and I said, when I was in Mali, I had an interpreter for the commercial who was this incredible man. He spoke 5 languages, was the sole supporter of his family, 35 years old, got a full ride to UNC, couldn't afford to go there. And he had never left Mali. And I said, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? And he said, I would go to Ghana. And I was like, no, not in Africa, like the world. Like,
yeah,
what would you want to see? And he said, no, I just want to go to Ghana. I hear the kindest people are there. And so I said, "Okay, I'm gonna go there next." And I went to Ghana and decided to do a month-long walkabout by myself and
okay,
met a repatriate there. And he told me, "Before you come out here, I want you to read this book." And I said, "That's very convenient because I just randomly picked it up at Barnes& and Noble the day before." And it was a book by my teacher, Elder Malidoma Patrice Somé. And so I went and I was trying to get up closer to Northern Africa, to the Dagara tribe, to Malidoma tribe, to Burkina Faso, and everything kept happening. I kept getting in car accidents and stuck in the bush, and just every problem that you can imagine happened,
it's
as you would call them, winds of adversity. It was still a magical, beautiful experience, but I couldn't find
yeah,
any shamans there. They were so disconnected. They were so colonialized that really there were more churches than there were any indigenous practices left.
sure,
Even when I went out into the bush, they were also, I think because of colonialism, very mistrusting of me. Like, why would you be here? What are you going to do with this? This is too sacred for you to hold.
yeah,
And when I was in these villages, I would be followed around and they had a saying, if you're going to church and you see a white woman, turn around because you've already seen God. And I really felt what it would be like to be famous and to be
yeah,
worshiped. And I didn't like it. I was like, I'm just human. I'm so deeply flawed. I just want to be here to learn from these people and to connect and to be treated like a human. And they didn't know how to treat me like a human because white people had been deified. And it really struck a nerve in me. And so I went back to New York, and I remember calling my mom again from a payphone, the good old days. And this time, Madonna's boyfriend at the time was behind me. It's so weird. But
Oh,
I was
boy.
like, I can't be famous. I can't do this. I can't be an actor. There's something wrong with it. It doesn't feel right. And so I'm going to come back to Chicago for a little bit and become a writer. And so I moved back to Chicago and signed up for writing classes at University of Chicago, got a bartending job at Spago, but really had been an actor already for 7 years. And it was how I knew to make money. And
Mm,
so I got with my old agency here and my old modeling agency, and I started going out for commercials and was doing really well again. And it was just what I knew. I didn't want to be seen by my high school again as a failure because I dropped out of school to be an actor, and how horrifying, and it from an academic background. And an LA agency came to meet with a bunch of clients at my talent agency, and they asked me to come out to LA for pilot season.
okay.
And I was like, okay, I've always like my dream was to book a pilot. This was the goal. This was the goal.
Yeah.
I called my old manager from New York. He moved from being an agent to a manager because of me. And I had left
Had
him. I was
had you
like,
been
could
out to
I?
LA before to do
I'd
some
never
stuff,
been
or?
to LA.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I hadn't been I never wanted to go because I just felt like it was really fake. It scared me. And I loved New York was, like, really raw, but at least it was really authentic and real. They'll tell you if they don't like you. And so my manager agreed to bring me back on, and I went out there and I did pilot season, and I booked what was supposed to be The Next Friends with Kevin Hart.
Mm,
And I made the most money that I had ever made in my life. I had hit that goal. And I thought, I guess this is it. I'm supposed to be an actor. And I was still deeply struggling. At that point, it had been 3 straight years of this severe OCD, but I had just learned how to mask it. I just
sure.
learned how to fake it to get by and just kept waiting and waiting for it to go away. And so I just thought I'm a
Yeah.
white blonde girl. I'm not supposed to be working with indigenous medicine. I'm supposed to be an actor because that's acceptable in this society. And I want
God.
people to not see me as a failure and to
Yeah.
prove them wrong.
So did you just have to walk around with that outer shell of,
Yeah.
I don't know, just there was probably it was the inner pain, or maybe you're wearing your pain, trying to kind of
Super
picture
inner
it.
pain. There was a couple times that it manifested in disease. I did get like a heart problem for about 3 months that I thought was chronic fatigue syndrome.
Okay.
But I got through it, and I had struggled with trauma since the age of 6, and so I really knew how to perform. I was a
Yeah.
dancer. I knew what to do, and I just kept hoping that something would click
Yeah.
where it would go away, and I was actively working on it. I was in therapy, I was put on medications, I would do yoga and meditation. I read every self-help book there was. I went to psychotherapists, I went to life coaches, I went to new age churches, I went to
Yeah.
crystal shops too.
Was it, yeah, and at that point too, was it just a consistent, just,
It was just
I
a
don't know, like an achy
consistent.
tooth that just never went away? Or
It
was
never
it,
went
did you have
away.
moments?
I was in a constant state of fear, like, I couldn't make close
Yeah, okay.
friendships. I could fake them, but I would just be
Yeah,
in a state of fear and would just get into the outer world and do enough to maintain a sense of normalcy, and then just would collapse into hermit mode
sure.
and just stay in my apartment and try to sing or write or do anything to help that.
Yeah,
But it was looking back, I really don't know how I did it.
yeah.
It was
Like almost acting your way through life.
I really was, yeah. I
Yeah,
was completely dissociated.
yeah. That disassociated, I think that was the term I was looking for too.
Mhm.
And I think we all do that in circumstances through our
Mhm.
life, especially people that are truly just, there's a deep pain, there's a deep resonance that they just can't seem to shake. They can't seem to identify it or locate it. Don't even know what to work on.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
I just know that I'm in like uncomfortable or anxiety, and it's like crippling.
We're trained into disassociation
Yeah.
in order to receive love,
Yeah.
I believe. And
No, I
you
think
can
there's real
really
insight
feel it
in that.
now.
Yeah.
And we all do it to some level probably for the rest of our lives.
Sure. Yeah.
You just don't want it to be a chronic state. You want it to be a state that you can recognize and acknowledge and say, "Well."
Yeah. I think as we get a little bit older, get more experience or however that, whatever the version of that work, there are aspects of our lives we do find those ease, or we
Yeah.
come into those ease points.
You
But
start to
it's, I
care
think
less what people think of you,
there's
hopefully.
that too. Some of the concern is that, but there's also that the flip side of that too, is because you mentioned like an OCD or those
Mhm.
acceptance things. Those are internal. It's not even some of that stuff is because I've had anxiety my whole life too. And it's just like some of it is just it's a me, it's a perfectionist. It's
Mhm.
me against me
Yeah.
versus me against the world. It's not even a
Mhm.
concern about the world. We've actually I was just before we got on too, we were talking about maybe talking in front of people or it's people like one of the biggest fears is like speaking
Oh, yeah.
and sometimes too, like, so for me, it's not necessarily like a fear of the crowd. Sometimes it's just, it's my head getting ahead, of myself. I'm more concerned. I'm so concerned about myself, but it projected in the sense of, oh, speaking in front of other people, I'm nervous or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So as we go through life and just that kind of an analogous sense there is just, I think we all do those things. And I don't know how much and I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that there's so much of it's internalized, but then there's with the idea of it being externalized. Um, and there's an exchange there.
Really, it's understanding the purpose of each and every emotion. How many thousands and thousands of emotions do we have? I don't believe that any of them don't serve a purpose. I
For
believe that
sure.
they're good. And it's recognizing that nervousness comes up because adrenaline is required in order to perform.
Yeah.
And when that nervousness is communicated to us through our analytical head, instead of the truth within our hearts, we tend to get lost in it.
Yeah.
And we've been miswired as modern humans and modern
I
civilization
agree.
with our
Yeah.
disconnection from nature to work from our heads into our hearts instead of the other way around.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more too. Working from the heart to the head, or the head wants to be the master, the mind
Yeah.
wants to be the master of it, and the heart doesn't want to be the
Ego.
master. The heart just
Yeah.
lives and loves and does these. And actually, there's even too like Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza. They all talk about there's actual like heart tissue, or I'm sorry, mind brain tissue, and in the heart, and the heart
Mhm.
has memory. And
Yeah.
there's actually studies about people that have heart transplants that have memory exchanges
Correct.
from previous lives. And I don't want to get too far off on this too. I think it
And
was
that
that.
the heart delivers more messages to the
Yeah.
brain than the
Yeah. And
other
it's
way
almost the
around. We
reverse.
just can't hear them
Yeah.
because we've been trained out of that languaging.
I, yeah, absolutely. And I think too, people put so much energy into the mind, but the mind is more of the gears and the pulleys and the things that make everything tick and move
Right.
and grow. But to feel it through is truly the gift. And it's a lot of, a lot of the resonance too, even with energy work. It's coming back to that heart space. It's coming back to the center point of here, that balance, even too, like in the mind and in the gut too. The guts has its own mind. That's where the chemicals are, the serotonins. That's where the releases are. And then if the gut and the mind are kind of in opposition or pulling, it's going to tug at the heart space.
Yeah.
And
Or
that,
imbalanced.
yeah, the imbalance in there too. So that's when you get into the consumerisms or even consuming things to get to the gut stuff, the
Mhm.
mind, and this disconnect. So I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent
I
there,
love
but
it though.
yeah, no, it's really fun. And there's actually, you triggered another thought too about the singularity point, but we'll come back to that too. So I to kind of continue on your story, because I do want to hear about your teacher. And again, you did the acting thing, you were in LA. Did you end up coming back to Chicago before going to Africa again? Or
Yes.
what's the
So
transition?
I got married to another actor. We were actually set up by Kristen Bell too. So I was doing
Oh,
Veronica
Kristen, wow,
Mars,
that's cool.
and she threw us our engagement party. And I think that there was a large part of me that was really hoping. He was a very stable person. He didn't have any of the nerves that I had. He just had this incredible confidence that I could not find in my body.
Okay.
And I think that it felt I really just longed for that. I had such admiration for it. I
Mm.
just, "What are you eating? What are you doing?" And the acting world at that point, it just I do think I was sensing into some dark things that were happening in Hollywood, but it was I would just get so close over and over again and work my butt off, and I was so rigid in everything that I did, just doing my therapy, doing my meditation to be right, starving myself, going to the gym every day, being perfect for all of my auditions, memorizing all of them and getting the perfect look, and it was just it was an all-consuming battle for radical acceptance from other
Wow.
people when I was completely rejecting everything in myself, and I would the rejection just took its toll. I would get to these points where I would have Kevin, Riley, the head of Fox, call my agent and say, "She's gonna be the next big thing. You don't understand. She's gonna be a star," and the producers of West Wing being like, "Oh, we wish we could hire her as the lead, but she just looks a little young, but we know she's gonna be great." And then after that, not working for 2 years and then having a writer's strike, and because they based what was happening on, money that we accumulated for the agencies getting dropped by my agent and completely abandoned, which
Really?
hit all my abandonment wounds, and I just felt like a failure again, and it was just like it felt very much like Sisyphus. I would just kept
Yeah.
getting so close to the top and rolling back to the bottom, and my self-loathing just increased, and I didn't think that I was relying my self-worth on booking that major job
Yeah.
and even getting famous or some sort of recognition for the type of actress that I could be and really just for who I was, and it was just it was impossible, and I think that the universe wasn't gonna let me
Yeah.
get my
'Cause there is something
self-worth
to
in
that.
that way. They weren't gonna serve me that medicine.
Yeah.
That
Real
really
quick,
the
2 things.
rejection was the medicine.
Yeah, sorry, I was gonna say is 2 things. One is when you were explaining that rigidity, that working, it was a very similar, if I may make an observation, the way you described high school and your schooling too.
But same
So it
thing.
was yeah, it
Same
was
thing.
very interesting how you did that,
Mhm.
even your demeanor. And so the parallel of that, those psychological tracks that you had continued on, definitely wasn't something you had healed or changed or evolved. And I had another question too, because it's I don't want to say I want to say I admire it, but I was going to say is I didn't hear any victimhood in you. I don't know. I think we all have resentments. What goes on, the Sisyphus up the hill. So
Mhm.
there's always a sense. We always carry a sense of victimhood, but then there's some of the stuff too. Is we're really, I think people that take true ownership too, we just blame ourselves for a lot of stuff. So we
Yeah.
harbor it. And
Yep.
then there are other aspects of our lives or people that will really externalize it and the victimhoods of that external things
Mhm.
that I can't change, I'm upset about. So I guess is I'm not sure there's much as of a question in there as much, but did you resentments fall into some of that internally, or were there
I
some of
think
those external?
I think that's what happens when we actually heal,
Yeah,
is you know that you're getting there. You're getting closer to wholeness if you don't see your life as victim or as that you were, a victim to it, but rather that it was a teacher into who you're supposed to be and that it was a cracking open of all of this faulty programming. As
yeah,
long as you don't resist it, so that you can begin to listen to who you are. At the time, I absolutely felt like a victim. It was just excruciating,
right.
and I was definitely would be described as a codependent, as a depressive, as anxious. I was given all of these diagnoses of what I
Sure,
was.
sure.
And
Label.
I was really crumbling. I would just be sobbing in the bathroom, rocking back and forth, just wanting in a perpetual state of, "Can I just die now?" Like, I just playing with that edge, and looking back, I have no resentment towards it.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
grateful for it. All of it was a lesson. I literally lost a good 19 years of my life of feeling of living because I don't believe that everybody who says that they when they have suicidal tendencies or they're going to do it, but if you are swimming in that emotional body, you're not living.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it's too hard. It's that auric energetic field or your emotions and your mental capacity is so concentrated. It's just so here. There's just no expansion in there. And it's so centric and everything feels heightened and stuff. And I've had long stretches of my path as well where it's just so in my head and it hurts. And it's not that, again, too, with the suicidal tendencies, there's people that do take action on that. And it's very sad. But I think there's these essence of this isn't fun anymore. I'm
Yeah.
just, what is this? What is the freaking point? Like, and it's just
Yeah.
not that you want to do something about it, but if you fade it away, you're like, I'm not going to be that upset. Burst into a bunch of atoms and
Yeah.
dissipate it. I'm not going to be that upset about it at that
No,
time.
I'm cool with it.
And
And I got to a point where I just said to my husband at the time, I can't be in this business anymore. It's literally killing me because it was literally killing me. And I did have a saying that I would say to friends back in then. I was like, I just feel like in order to get famous, you have to sell your soul to the devil. And that was something that I had really committed to with myself was I was not going to flirt with anybody to get a job. I was not going to push my boobs up. I was not going to use sexuality. I was not going to use any manipulation tactics. I was not going to date anybody in the scene. I really wanted to get my job on merit. And it's just not a part of the program. And I'm grateful I stuck to that honor that contract that I made with
right,
myself. And so that may be another reason why I'm not in a resentful state. It was an experience
yeah,
and a
I,
training.
you were definitely being protected at some level, I'm sure. Cause, and I don't want to assume anything, but some, in certain circumstances or again, in our life, our path,
Yeah.
for all there, we can get into positions that are give us the thing that we may want, but then there's expectancies and dependencies, and there's people
Sacrifices.
have those ownerships over you that act like I did you this favor,
You
and
have to self-betray.
yeah,
It
there is
is
some,
the business
yeah,
of
there's some
being a
level of
slave
compromise.
to fame, and I think what helped me too was seeing that in Ghana, was really seeing that's not the type of fame I want. I want to be a good actress. I want to be able to be in these brilliant films and get these brilliant roles and be a part of that community and also have this void of I just want people to accept me and tell me I'm okay. But I didn't want to be worshipped. And
Yeah,
that's a very different thing is
sure,
working for respect and honor and working for deification.
yeah.
They're two different frequencies. And I think that did help me.
Especially the recognition too that we're all human, we're all these
Well,
meat sacks running around. We're all in pain. We all have beauty. We all have joys. We all have laughters. We have all these aspects of us, but we're just all humans.
yeah.
We're all
I was like, I'm
so
so flawed.
yeah. To have somebody put you in a different level of being the human state, yeah, that's a and so anybody. I don't want to say anybody. That's not fair to say anybody that would want that is that's a whole nother level of psychology in that too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And that's not a whole place either if you're wanting that.
right.
It's
Yeah,
just
because it's probably coming from a deep place of pain
it's
and requirement.
unsustainable.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can't get to that point and not betray. You can't get to that point and not uh cuts off large pieces of who you are in order to maintain that level of celebrity and acceptance for that long.
yeah. I want to hear about your teacher and how you got into
Yeah.
because so I know you more in the world of after this acting is more in the world of modalities of breath work, of calorie shells, of energy work. You working very I don't know, maybe working is not the right word, but you just flowing into healing with people and talking and that's and giving and that's the person that I met. We've had many conversations. And where does this person that is in deep pain sitting in LA get to I
Yeah.
guess where you are today. And I know that's a big gap. I don't want to
What
maybe,
happened was we actually my husband at the time booked a show in Chicago and we decided to raise I was pregnant with my son at the time. I had a daughter after I quit the business. I did go back to CSI Miami after that. I did try acting again, but the rejection again was just too much for me to handle. I was struggling with postpartum. It was a difficult time. And we got a job to move to Chicago, which is where I'm from originally. He was from Boston, and we just wanted to raise our kids here because it was out of that sort of Hollywood scene and down to earth and a really great, diverse city, artistic city. And I really did prefer living here to LA. It did help a lot. And I did start to get back with my agent here and audition a little bit, but I was really just present with my kids. They were so young. And in 2017, I just had a really rough year. Another big hit, Dark Night of the Soul. I lost three of my family members to drug addiction from OxyContin, from surgeries, and then another family member that I had really malevolent experiences with when I was younger. And I got a what there was a flu pandemic back then too that was not as well advertised. And I got what would be considered like long COVID, just sick for 4 months, couldn't breathe, couldn't get out of bed. It was really difficult and still was left alone a lot. My husband was still acting in LA a lot. So I had two kids on my own and I just again hit that dark night. And that summer, I had been reading Malidoma's books. I kept them with me. I stayed up with his newsletter. I read all of his newsletters. I would go back for the healing wisdom of Africa whenever I would get lost, back to a water and spirit. And he happened to be around my 41st birthday in Chicago. And my husband at the time was like, "You can get a reading for your birthday." And so I sat with him in cowrie shell divination. It was just like, for me, that was the biggest celebrity sighting ever. Like, I've been with celebrities, I've been with Kevin Hart. Seeing Brad Pitt was cool, but like Malidoma, I was like, this is the person who has been in my heart, who has spoken to my soul for the last 17 years, and the only thing that has made me see the possibilities of healing. And after I sat with him, he gave me a few rituals. He talked to me a lot about what I was seeing and experiencing in my OCD and my day-to-day life. And something happened to me 3 weeks after my reading where literally my brain just switched back into place. It
Yeah.
switched back into the place of where it was before my dark night of the soul in New York after 19 years. And I remembered who I was. And it was such a miracle thing. I never believed it would happen. I had succumbed to just maintaining again that facade and getting by and acting my way through life. I did have times of joy. Like it's not so
Yeah,
black
yeah.
and white,
No, I know
it's
what you mean,
nuanced,
for sure.
but it was difficult to have joy.
The pain resonance felt like it, and even in the memories feel like it lasted longer than just
Yeah,
joy.
and it felt like in life to me, I remember I went rollerblading with my dad and my brother once. And I was like, why is it so easy for you guys? I can't keep up. I'm so exhausted. And they were like hockey players, but I was athletic and I just couldn't keep up. And we got home and my dad looked at the bearings and your bearings were stuck, Amy. It was literally like you were and I was like, "Oh god, thank god it wasn't me." And then I went and
Yeah, yeah,
that's what life felt like to me. It just felt like
sure.
my bearings were locked and I couldn't move forward. It took such effort in
Yeah.
order to make any forward movement. And so after I experienced that, unfortunately, a lot of things shifted in my life and I was a different person and it was as though the glass case that I was in completely shattered and I could hear and feel and see and smell and touch again and nothing was as it was anymore.
Was it more, do you feel like it might have been many different levels, but was it
Mhm.
more of a release? Was it more of a change, like a I'm trying to
You know
describe
what
it
it
in a
felt like?
sense?
It felt like when you have a radio that's in between stations
Yeah.
and you have that static and you hear them coming in and coming out, or truckers are like coming in, or
Sure, sure,
like
you're hearing it,
TVs.
and then you get the
And it was
yeah,
literally like you find that station and all of a sudden the music starts playing
got
and
it.
it's like your favorite song and you're rocking out and you're like, oh my God, I've been looking for this. And that's what it felt like. It felt like a stream of energy through my body where I could hear again, where I could feel again, where I could dance again, where I could groove again.
Yeah.
And it felt like a nothing short of a miracle. And so I knew that after that, even though it was crazy to be a white Midwestern WASPy woman wanting to cowrie shell divine and learn how to work with indigenous West African medicine, I had no other choice. I knew what it was. And part of
Yeah.
me wonders if I heard the call back in Mali, and when I didn't listen to it, the universe fucked with me until I started listening.
Yeah, and you came on there was an expectation that was programmed in you at the point too that you're just where you were gonna stay on the course that you did.
I wanted to be accepted.
Yeah, and that was a requirement.
And
You
it
know, it was
seemed
action on a
impossible. What was I gonna do with West African This is so weird, and this is the
yeah,
'90s. I didn't wanna be culturally appropriating anything or
yeah. It's also you can't blame yourself either. You gotta yeah, obviously, you go back and you forgive that person or whatever it is, but it was you did what you'd made the choices that were right for you at the time. Because it's all this thing too is we're programmed in this, we'll just say this society or this lifetime or whatever it is, and the money and the drive and the things that are you even talked about the grades or the perfections and stuff like that. And
Yeah, and also, I would say it was my training. I I really have an uncomfortable term. I do not use the term shaman. I have an uncomfortable experience with other people loosely using the term shaman. But I think in order to work with it as a healer with these frequencies, with these energies, you have to go through an initiation.
okay.
And initiations in West Africa look like radical deaths of the self, radical deaths of the ego, radical deaths of your concrete reality around you so you can begin to have the humility required to be able to dance in the other world and
Hmm.
receive those messages from the other world without using them for black magic, for manipulation, for control, for power.
Makes sense.
And
Get what you want to manipulate the
yeah, to be
environment.
like,
Because
"I know this. I'm psychic. I'm a
yeah,
Miko," and people use it in the wrong way.
yeah.
It's
And
a
who knows
very
you and
having
I
access
trust you.
to being a healer doesn't make you a healer, doesn't make you a good person. You can
Sure.
still use it in nefarious ways, and I think that I'm grateful for those 19 years because it, like, drove me into the ground. It brought me to my knees. It humbled me beyond belief, beyond human capacity. And you you can't get that kind of training in modern worlds.
Yeah.
And you can't get it in a college, you can't get it in a class, you can't get it going to Peru and doing ayahuasca. You have to get it in a way that your body and your soul is going to understand, and it's going to break you down to your core so that you
Yeah.
finally surrender and believe in love and God and whatever that is to you.
Yeah. And if it would have come to you that easy back in that original trip too, you wouldn't have appreciated it or respected it. And
Absolutely. I'd be a shit show. I'd probably be a big asshole. It all really did serve an incredible purpose to the point where I'm really grateful for it because
yeah.
uh, it just cracked my heart open in ways that helps you get into that beautiful, it's almost like the sap within trees, which is that real just love. It's
Yeah.
the like I talk about this a lot. It's the love and the pain. You can't be whole in life without learning how to understand that pain is love too.
Yeah. How long did you work with him or train or whatever?
Malidoma for 2
Yeah.
years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And you went over to Africa to see
Mhm.
him multiple times?
No, I trained he was in America, and
Oh, he was. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
his name means to become friends with the enemy. And so his
Uh-huh.
story is incredible. I really recommend reading his book of his life of water and spirit because he was kidnapped from his village. So much like it's interesting now that I'm just realizing that this might be why he helped me, but he was kidnapped but actually rather sold by his father from his village at a very young age because the Jesuits came in and said, "You guys are going to go to hell if you don't convert." And so they gave Malidoma to them to turn into a priest, and he went into the priesthood there where he was really deeply abused psychologically, physically, sexually, and but taught to how to read and write and all of these things and schooled. And he finally escaped at a later age much older age, and found his way back on his own through the bush, um, hundreds of miles back to his village. And when he got there, they were like, "You're white now, so we have to start over with you." And he had to completely go through all of these initiations that these young boys went through, typically at 13, at a much older age, from a place of radicalized fear, from a place of being disassociated from your intuition, from a place of being deeply traumatized, and move through that. And then they were like, okay, now you have to go teach this to white people so they don't come hurt us anymore. And
Wow.
so that was his life's path. And so
Yeah.
I studied with him in Asheville, and I studied cowrie shell divination with him, a program called IAST, which is Indigenous African Spiritual Technologies, and then did a few more initiations with him around the candomblé that I've spoken to you about, the nature spirits. And then he chose a select group to go with him to Africa in August, again, around my birthday, which was amazing, to meet with shamans out there and connect with his homeland. And so I did a lot of radical rituals with him with all the elements, and it was really incredible. I wish we had access to it here.
Yeah.
It's just very few people would be open to it. And that's why I was so drawn to breath work, because I was like, here is something that the modern mind can relate to
Hmm.
and open up to, but it can be used as a radical ritual, as an initiation to be able to work with the various elements to break down the faulty program of our modernized systems.
Oh man, that's beautiful. Yeah, definitely that book. And there was another book too that you had recommended to me a while back, and it was a Black Elk. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my most recent travels. My teacher, he did pass away 2 years ago, but I still feel him. But yeah, Black Elk was another elder that came to me last year, the same Lakota tribe. And it's just, you hear the wisdom of these people. And it's so fascinating to me that these cultures are referred to as being primitive because they aren't educated in reading or writing or modern literature. And yet they know so much more than we
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah. It's beyond the, again, the scholastic or the governance over within the rule sets. There's biotechnologies, there's connections to,
Mhm.
again, to, like you mentioned, to nature, to your surroundings and the breath.
The stuff I saw in the bush in Burkina Faso, and the stuff that Malidoma speaks on in his book, I didn't believe any of it. I'm like, "There's no way that happened, he's making it up." And then when you see it and you experience it, it's miraculous. And I do feel Joe Dispenza speaks on the possibilities
Hmm.
of what the human is capable of.
Right.
But when you see these impossible situations of magic, of healing, of radical healing, of pulling the tangible out of thin air,
Hmm.
you just start to believe in anything.
Absolutely.
I really highly recommend too. I don't know if I told you about this, but there's a documentary called Rich Man's Medicine, Poor Man's Medicine about when Western medicine was brought to West Africa and they outlawed indigenous medicine. They had to come and practitioners and diviners and medicine men. But when you see these men interviewed, it's like they don't understand why the white person is so afraid.
Oh, it's, no, I have never heard of that one.
It's really beautiful. And it's what I love about it is it's from a neutral space.
Sure.
It doesn't present it as one's better than the other. It just helps you look at it and be like, because one of the most amazing things I saw when I was in Mali was they were working together to try to cure AIDS, to bring Western medicine in communion with indigenous medicine, and nothing ever came of it. And I think that nothing comes of it because there's the cure there.
Sure. Yeah. Then you go into a whole other big subject.
Yeah.
Oh man. So so before we wrap up, I got just a couple different little questions. I could go on because that's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that, your experience. But these are just a couple more worldly questions. One is, you've talked about your grandmother
Mm.
having the whole history of being an actress and knowing people like I just say like Sinatra and just all the big names. And
Bing
she
Crosby, Bob Hope,
that's phenomenal. So I can only
Howard
imagine that
Hughes.
her as a teacher too. She was probably an incredible teacher
She
of
was.
story. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and she was
Is that
also a medium. So she
okay? That's
raised
right.
me and my mother raised me I watched all musicals, Hollywood musicals. I was raised on old movies and old Hollywood, and I loved it. I adored it. That kind of acting, the Katharine Hepburns, the Cary Grants, the Jimmy Stewarts. I just was Marilyn Monroe. I was obsessed with Lauren Bacall. I just was in awe. But then she also taught me about spirituality and would talk about all of these astral projection and channeling and
Yeah,
watching spirits and working with making her own Ouija boards and talking to the other world like it was the same thing. All of it, and it all worked together. She was an artist. She was a
yeah.
singer, and our true artists are connecting to the other world.
Yeah, what an incredible teacher in that respect too, because that was way before anything was, we'll just call it in vogue or mainstream conversational
Yeah.
aspects. Like,
Hmm.
so I would imagine she got some sideways glances from people or some more traditional, we'll call it either maybe religion or just traditional thinking people. I'm sure she got her share of
Oh,
criticism.
yeah. I think the greatest thing about watching her is that she really didn't she gave ZS
She
about
didn't
what other
care.
people thought of her.
That's amazing. To walk unapologetically, just to be, you can't mess with that person at a
Yeah.
deep level.
Yeah.
You can get to all of us at some level here and there, or the triggers or the upsetness, but
Yeah.
the deep level, that security,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Is that where you learned to sing? Because you're also can sing.
I
You're a singer.
I learned to sing from my mom. My grandmother was a
Okay.
singer too. She sang sometimes, but my mom raised me to be a singer. We would just belt in the car all the way to
Love
school,
it.
all the way to Wisconsin, like singing the Carpenters and yeah,
I think
all of that.
I think with singing, there's a confidence or courage with it. I personally can't. I'm like tone deaf. I'm told, but my wife says I'm tone deaf. But I don't know. Like I'll just belt it out, but I'm like, she's just like, you're tone deaf. I don't know. So I
It
don't. There is
doesn't
a talent.
matter. Honestly, I think
Yeah.
singing is the most healing thing. I was telling someone in my class last night, you know, what I've been doing to get through this rough time is just singing at the top of my lungs, even when getting over laryngitis. I still sang to get out of it. And even if it was in like that little octave of three notes that I could do it, there's something so healing in it. Even if I was off key, even if my voice cracked, it was just like it really is. It creates that resonance. It fine tunes that antenna that we were talking about. So I say
Yeah.
sing away, even if you suck.
I think they just give me. I think my wife and the boys just give me grief regardless of
As
what I
they
do.
should.
They should. That's their job. I love it. So, as I excuse me, as I ask this question, I feel a little silly by asking it, but because it's a journey. But is there an iteration of where you're at now, of where you want to go with everything, or is it just to continue to grow, learn? I don't want to lead you into any of that. Is there a direction you're headed? The big picture?
I've tried so hard to keep doing like these big classes and to get out there more. And really, I just need to take it one step at a time. I love calorie shell divining so much. I love working with one-on-one clients
Yeah.
because I learn so much from it. So many beautiful lessons I learned that I would never know of if these people didn't come in and get vulnerable with me because
Yeah.
each of us holds such magic, such wisdom, such inspiration. And with breath work, I just see such miraculous healings for people to
Yeah.
reconnect to their own intuition. My big goal, because I do believe that the frequency of fame, of really getting popularized is really is dangerous. You have to be so careful with it. I like my little world that I'm in. But what I
We have a tendency to want to supersize things, I think sometimes, or maybe that's our society.
no desire anymore to supersize. I love working one on one. I hope I just want to keep learning and I think daily we just want to show up being authentic and speaking our truth and keep exploring and keep getting curious. I'm a forever student. I think that's what keeps us in line with life and with youth and with resiliency. And I was listening to a podcast today, actually, by this woman, Laura Matsu, and she just said, I can't help but speaking what I see or speaking my truth or sharing what I've discovered, sharing what I know. And that's really all that matters to me at this point. It's so much fun being able to feel like I can't shut up about all the things that I'm learning and
It
to
is,
forever be
yeah,
learning.
beautiful space to be in too. So that means, in a sense, too, don't want to be presumptuous or some assuming anything in your life, but you've created a safe space, or you've created that window or that environment that you can explore and grow and learn. So that's incredible.
And
It's
I
awesome.
hope we all continue to inspire people to come back to ourselves
Yeah,
and look at ourselves and get more and more whole because
yeah,
it's just I just don't want anybody to be disassociated as long as I was. I think it was necessary for me. It was required of me to do what I have to do right now. And my hope is that I can just help people navigate that a little bit more smoothly, thread that needle a little bit easier, more
absolutely.
easily.
Because it is
So they
within all
can
of us.
start doing what
Yeah,
they came here to do,
yeah. It is
because
within
we're
all of
all
us, and
needed.
yeah, and the courage and the strength to speak those truths and to have the crazy conversations or not, even if they're cognitive, just the exploration and the playfulness and the adventure.
Yeah,
That's
even if it's as simple as who are you? What are we feeling? Again, to go back to the beginning of what we were talking about, what do you feel like when you're nervous? What do you think nervousness is for? How do you think we can work with it? Even if it's just on the basis of our crazy human experience without all
right.
the woo, but just our beautiful, dynamic internal worlds as they are, I think that's what can make us work as a community and create the right kind of environment for our kids to grow up in.
Absolutely. I think sometimes you have to create those communities as well too. You have to create those surroundings, maybe not communities, but just those surroundings too.
Absolutely.
You know?
People have to be open to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know that I've sought things out and never quite found the arena and stuff. And that's
Mhm.
it's some things you have to create. And then the attraction of those will come, and people will resonate with it.
Yep. I think
So
once you find that frequency in yourself, it'll start to make more sense. We're all just constantly throwing pasta against the wall to see if it's ready.
I agree. I agree. So perfect. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank
This
you.
was wonderful. I really appreciate it.
This was awesome.
And then, so real quick too, where can people find you?
You can find me at thewitchandtheelf.com is my website, and I'm at the Witch and the Elf on Instagram.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.